And we are live. Good afternoon, greetings everybody. Hakiami here on the Raising Consciousness and Capital show. Um, it's a beautiful day. Hope you all are enjoying the wonderful weather. I have the honor and pleasure of introducing a fabulous young lady who serves in the Maryland legislator. This is her first session, so give some claps and for that. And she's done a phenomenal job. She represents District 27B, as in Bravo, in Calvert and Charles County. So let me welcome Delegate Rachel Jones. So, greetings to you, sister. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much
Good
for
afternoon. I'm doing very
having me
well.
today.
Thank you so much for having me today. Yes, so definitely. So let's just open with giving yourself an intro for those who may not know. Just you have been in politics for quite some time before you ascended to this position as a delegate. So just give a quick intro what you did just prior to that, and we can start the conversation.
Sure. I'm born and
Sure.
raised in Calvert
Well,
County in Southern Maryland, but I attended Morgan State University for my undergraduate degree, and I'm a proud Bear. I got my start there, and during that time, my first professional job or introduction into the world of politics was during my senior year at Morgan when I interned for former Senator Nathaniel McFadden of the 45th Legislative District. And so Mac was my first,
okay. Mac was my first.
yeah. And I learned a lot from him, and he was great to work for. And then I went on later to work for both U.S. Senator Barbara Mikulski and currently for Senator Ben Cardin. And so when the opportunity came and the late Senator Miller resigned and later passed, unfortunately, he was my senator, and the delegate seat became vacant when now Senator Jackson was appointed to that vacancy in the Senate. And so I'm glad to be bringing all of my years of experience in Maryland politics and in United States politics to the Maryland legislature.
That is a distinguished resume, might I add. I didn't know you worked for Barbara Mikulski as well, so that's phenomenal. And I'm getting an echo. I don't know, but hopefully I'll mute you when you speak. But hopefully you can hear me good. But I wanted to let my people on Instagram know as well that to listen to this. But so, what were some of the priorities that you all accomplished in the legislature this year? I mean, Maryland has been pioneering what I know, particularly with the police reform. So, but you can speak to that because that was kind of like what some are considered the major things. But if you can speak to that and maybe one thing other that perhaps you worked on that you thought was the priority.
Sure. So when I was appointed on February 18th, I was coming in when session, of course, was already underway, and I was assigned to the Judiciary Committee. So that is where we undertook the Police Reform and Accountability Bill, House Bill 670. We also undertook many landlord and tenant bills that were intended to provide relief to families and persons who were experiencing hardship as a result of COVID. And so, really the highlight for me was having the honor to be able to be a part of police reform. As you've already said, Haki, it is unprecedented across the nation. Maryland is the first state to pass such a comprehensive bill in police reform, requiring body cams by 2025 by every single state and local police department, greater accountability with civilian review boards, more disciplinary actions in place for officers who are found guilty of misconduct, So there's just a lot there that is not being done anywhere else in the country. And so really glad to have been able to be a part of this session, to be here for this. But again, the major priorities were COVID relief. So being able to provide working families with relief from rental assistance, being able to ensure that folks are not getting evicted, putting protections in there for families. That was important. Fixing unemployment and providing measures for changes to the unemployment system and the way unemployment benefits are received, so that people who have been hurting and have been out of work or underemployed can get the help that they need. I was really pleased with that. Election laws. So, we passed permanent absentee ballot, mail-in voting, and measures like that. So election bills, police reform, unemployment, those were sort of the major issues, I think, this session that we really undertook.
So, all right, great, great, great. That's a great opening. So let's talk about you made a very detailed comment about President Biden's speech. So just elaborate for those, that, how you see it from the Maryland side, and we can get into some of the parts of his speech.
Sure. And I have to credit Dr. Alex Jackson at Morgan State University for that in the political science department. That's something that's just stuck with me over the last 15 years or so. Is I typically, to give background on what you just said, Haki, I typically watch all the presidential addresses and State of the Unions and debates, and then give my own breakdown on social media. And I've done it for over a decade now. And so last night's joint session address by the president, I thought he struck a tone that was very conciliatory. I thought that it seemed his goal was really to try to unify, as he said he would during his campaign. It seemed that even in this address, he was trying to compel folks to work together across the aisle, just to ensure that we are making sure that the American people have what they need. And he made a really striking point about how, when the government, or, when the preamble says we the people, he said, that's us. We are the government. We are the people, and we are the ones that America's counting on to make these decisions. And so he really tried to appeal to Republicans and Democrats to work together on things like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We know that bill was first dropped last year and hasn't really moved, hasn't made a lot of progress. And so now he's urging Congress to work together. And he even said, hey, let's get that passed before the first anniversary of George Floyd's death coming up in a few weeks. And so he also urged them to work together to get the Equality Act passed that would provide protections for LGBTQ Americans. The Violence Against Women Act, we know that has been authorized and reauthorized time and time again, but currently, that funding was not included last year. So he's saying, let's authorize it. Let's make sure that we close loopholes and keep guns out of the hands of violent or dangerous boyfriends or partners, because currently there's language in that bill that covers spouses. But if your partner has mental health issues or what have you, and can still have access to a gun and create a domestic violence situation in which so many people lose their lives. I think the statistic last night, he says 50 women a month are shot and killed by an intimate partner. And we can pass this bill and close that loophole and save some lives. And I completely agree with that. He touched on immigration. And this is one of the things that even in the Maryland legislature, this year, we took up the Dignity Not Defense Act to close ICE facilities here in Maryland. And I know that conservatives said, well, you don't want us to cooperate with law enforcement. And I didn't view it that way. I firmly believe, like the act says, dignity, not detention, for a reason. That if someone is here illegally, there are proper ways and proper protocol that we can put in place so that we are not taking away people's human dignity. having them sleep on floors, and just some of the terrible stories that we're hearing out of some of these detention facilities, and children being separated from their parents. This is America. And so we like to say that we're the greatest nation on the earth. And I really think that we should hold ourselves to that standard. And so, as President Biden addressed immigration last night, he was saying for more than 30 years, we've talked about immigration reform, and now it's time to actually do something. Democrats don't want open borders. No one really wants open borders. We want our borders to be safe and to be protected. But we also have to make sure that we've got proper regulation in place. And what I'd much rather see is that if we're not going to allow folks to cross the border and to come into this country, why do we need to detain you? Why do we need to separate parents from their children and keep them locked away, and in some cases never even have the proper tracking set up so that you can reunite those families later on? I would much rather that they turn folks away at the border if they're just going to let you cross and then detain you and separate you. And so obviously the president is saying, let's talk about what we can agree on. And one of the things he said was going to be key, was going to be key in his administration was that, he was going to task Vice President Kamala Harris with addressing the root causes of migration from Central America so they can figure out why so many people are trying to cross the border. And if they can address those conversations with leaders of those nations, then maybe we won't see as many as numbers so high of people crossing the border and numbers so high of folks that are being detained. He talked about voting rights. The Voting Rights Act, it baffles me that that we cannot get that passed, that there is not enough goodwill on the other side of the aisle to pass that. It is truly troubling to me. But he was just saying, we've got to act now on that. We've got to act now and pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So it was a strong address, I felt. Focus on jobs, climate change, voting rights, gun control, immigration reform, COVID, obviously, and the vaccines, and the importance of making sure that folks are able to take advantage of the vaccines to reduce the number of people who are getting infected and to try to cut back on all of these numerous strains that are popping up around the country, not the country, but around the world, all these different strains that are popping up. So the more folks that get vaccinated, the better it will be for reducing the amount of folks that catch COVID.
Well, yes, yes. So, Ishan, thank you for elaborating. You kind of gave a good synopsis. I saw an article where it said Biden is pandering to the left. Uh, what issues are people saying when they talk about that? I know people say immigration, for instance. You have some people who want to put up these walls still and block everybody. But what would you say, for instance, to those that say that President Biden is pandering to the left?
To those folks, I would say Joe Biden is giving us the same messaging that he gave us during his campaign, right? So it's not pandering, in my opinion, because he's a Democrat. He's never pretended that he wasn't a Democrat. And while he may be may have been more moderate in the past, it seems like some of the things that he's addressing are more progressive. Last night he even talked about the Dreamers when he talked about immigration. So I don't think he's pandering because these are things that some studies would show the majority of Americans want to see, right? If you are asking for protections for voting rights, if you are asking for protections for rights for LGBTQ Americans, if you're asking for, affordable wages, that's not pandering to the left to me. To me, that's looking out for the needs of everyday Americans and saying, what do middle class and lower class families really need? And that's not pandering, because those folks can be Republicans, Independents, Democrats, Green Party, and still be out of a job, still need to vote, still be somebody who's discriminated against because they're in a protected class, but maybe, you know, wherever they live, their employer doesn't share those, or doesn't isn't an ally. And so I don't see them as pandering. I see it as him being the Democrat that we elected.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we saw last night two women, and a big deal was made about that. What would you say? How did that make you feel? And it's a proud moment for many in this country, never before seen. So how did that resonate with you?
I thought it was wonderful to see. You have Kamala Harris, obviously the first woman of um, uh, Black descent and Asian American descent, uh, sitting behind the president, and of course Nancy Pelosi, our
And she's from Baltimore, just so you know. She's from Baltimore. Yeah, right. Yeah, just so you know.
yes, yes, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi, yes. So I thought it was just amazing to see. It's one of those things where it's a moment captured in history. And my thought was, this is the first time we're ever seeing it, but it will not be the last. And I thought it set an excellent example for young girls and young women everywhere, for what they can aspire to be and what they can aspire to do in this world and in this country. And I thought it was I thought it was interesting to see that even their mannerisms and their temperament was a little bit different from what we may have been accustomed to seeing with two men back there. And so I loved it.
A mute here. So, could you just, there are many people that ask and say that Biden has not addressed the African American community. I'm not sure. How would you speak to that? How would you say, okay, this assists the African American community? Uh, what does someone have to do to please the black electorate?
I think that the Black community is obviously more greatly affected by um, other conditions or other issues that affect the rest of the nation in a major way. The Black community is often more heavily impacted, like what we saw or what we've been seeing with COVID. And so I feel like there are so many systems in which we as Black people are at a disadvantage, just due to the way things have been historically. And what I would like to see more of is the president trying to address some of those issues. So we know we have the Fair Housing Act, right? We know that that exists and that it was supposed to eliminate limitations and restrictions on where Black people could buy homes and where you could live. But we also know that these days there is bias in when you go to a bank and you apply for a loan or you're looking for a lender. We know that these biases still exist. And so what I'd like to see is, sort of policy that is more framed around addressing discriminatory practices within our institutions, and ensuring that there are measures in place to, how do I put this? To properly discipline those who would break those laws and those who would continue to discriminate, or those who would continue to create barriers against anyone, simply because of the color of our skin. I know that there are many folks that would like to see reparations on the table. Um, for me, reparations would be in that form. It's not so much a check. I want you to fix the system. The system is broken. I want the system overhauled and fixed. So that's what I'd like to see be more of a priority for him. And certainly we know that South Carolina helped secure him the primary last year in the election. And And most people have been recognizing that the Black vote really did help ensure that he would be the nominee for the party. And so what I'd like to see is just that he would ensure that our issues and our concerns are not forgotten. Black businesses, small businesses particularly took a huge hit last year. Every small business, right? But again, Black owned small businesses were hit particularly hard, and so many of them shuttered and closed. And so what I'd like to see is we're ensuring that while we have minority business loans for small businesses, I think we need to make sure that we're actually following through and making sure that a greater percentage of those minority businesses are Black-owned businesses. So those are the kind of things I'd like to see him do.
So those are the kind of things I'd like to see him do.
Being accountable to the Black community.
Accountable to the Black community.
Great, great. Let me shout out to Lamar Fun, who says her grandfather was the first African American principal in Calvert County. So he taught everyone's parents and grandparents. So let me give a shout out to her.
Some of the funds.
So,
yes, I know some
yeah.
funds.
Yes, I know.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay, all right. She's on my Instagram. So thank you, sister. And I'm sure she's happy that you know her. So, all right. Well, the only other thing is, of course, many people know I'm on the board of the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus Foundation, and we're looking forward to our weekend events, our breakfast, Unity Breakfast, of course, and our weekend events in tentatively Cedric Richmond. We're still waiting to confirm him, I believe, so we're looking forward to that. But I would just like to encourage everybody. I do have to save the date for that coming up. But so I guess we pretty much to the end. My only further question is, are you running next year for your seat?
Yes.
2022.
Absolutely.
Well, yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, yay.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, good.
Absolutely.
Gearing up for that right now, and I'm, going to be ready to hit the ground running. Well, I've already hit the ground running, but I'm definitely ready to start campaigning and to get out there into the community a little bit more as just Rachel. Obviously I've been a representative for other people, and so it's going to be good to chat with folks about my ideas and my platform. That's going to be great. So yes, I am, and I'm excited.
Awesome. Is Brandywine in that area still or no?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. I used to live down there, so I know a lot about that area.
Okay.
I look forward to chatting with you. I said 20-ish minutes, so I appreciate this, and it's been good. You continue to do what you do, and I'm sure I shall see you around, okay?
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any other contact information? If anybody want to reach you, reach out for you, contribute?
Yes, you can reach me at rachel.jones@house.state.md.us, and you can follow me on Twitter at Rachel J for MD.
All right. Thanks a million, and you enjoy the rest of your day, and hug your sons for me, and keep inspiring them to continue to be strong Black men. Thank you very much, sister.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, take care.